Hello, Ross Jordan with Inquiring International. We are going through CMMC compliance, level 1, self-attestation. We have reached section 13, and this is the behemoth. This is the big one. This actually assimilates almost everything we've talked about in the prior videos and all the requirements that you have into one area. So it's going to be complex. We're going to get through it as best we can, but we're going to start with the plain English, right? What's this mean? Well, as I said, this brings everything that we've talked about in prior videos into practice. That's the critical part. It's not just doing it, it's putting it into practice. We'll talk a little bit more about that. How does this impact your organization? Well, this impacts you in a lot of ways. This is where we go from form to functionality. It's one thing to say this is what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. This is where it becomes functional. But I want you to look ahead, just 9-10 years down the road. We've got quantum computing going on right now. It's working. And by the way, the US is way behind Europe and China on this. But NIST has already stated that security standards that exist today will be easily overcome by quantum computing by 2035. So this isn't just making decisions for now, which is critical, but making decisions that allow you to be agile as quantum changes things. Now, quantum's still a lot of theory. Here in Colorado, we have a very big quantum base, so I probably get a lot more information than most of you do, but I can tell you this, it's going to change the world. So what we're applying in Section 13 for your company has to be rigid enough to take care of things today, but agile enough to open up and make sure that you can manage things as this moves forward. Nothing you have to worry about today or maybe even the next 3 to 5 years, but something you do need to consider going forward. All right, a lot of notes from me on this one, so here we go. This is where you define how you monitor, control, protect all of your endpoints and manage all your information systems. So think about it this way. The easiest scenario I can give you is that if you've ever gone to a coffee shop or a Starbucks or anything in public where people are using Wi-Fi, they're using Bluetooth headsets to work on their computers and they're speaking loud and openly about customer information, what they're working on, what they're doing. Imagine having to manage that for dozens, if not hundreds of people throughout the world, whether it's because you're down because there's power out at your plant or because there's salespeople. You have customer information going everywhere, and it's going across multiple environments. So just the one that I gave you, right? We're talking about a company-owned device on a public Wi-Fi network using Bluetooth technologies. And the worst of it is everybody's just talking out loud about what's going on with your customers or what's going on with your systems. So realize that you have to manage all of that in just that environment. Now, if you want to have that person driving down the road, now you got a cellular technology instead of a wireless technology. So what this means for your company is that you've got to really start thinking about what rules you have when all of these devices and our mobility, which is just rampant nowadays, how do you manage that? How do you control it? And more importantly, how is it documented? And finally, how do you control it? How do you make sure it's meeting the security standards that you've documented and set? So very critical questions there. Think of layered protections, right? You can't keep the salesperson who's like herding cats from talking out loud about it. In fact, most of them are boisterous. Oh yeah, we do business with Boeing and we're going to do this and we're going to do that for you. Sometimes the most competitive information I can get is just sitting in a coffee shop, just, you need to get them to stop doing that. But truthfully, you've got to think about all those layers of what's going on in your organization. You have to encrypt those. Now, again, you've got that same scenario. Somebody's in a coffee shop talking about information and they're on the computer, right? Now, they may be logged in and they may have credentialized themselves, but what happens to the cat behind them who's using their screen as a mirror to just look at what you're doing? Or what if they're recording it? Those things are so simple to do nowadays. So if you're working a federal contract and that individual's out there and I can capture that information and share that with you, you're in breach. So you need to really, 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 really take this one seriously and realize this is where we put everything into practice. All right, FIPS. This is Federal Information Processing Standards. You need to make sure that everything that you're doing in your cryptology, in your protection, is FIPS validated. It's got to be done to the FIPS standard, especially around your federal contracts. Something I would recommend you do everything that way, but at least make sure that your federal contracts has FIPS cryptology that is validated. Your subnetworks, public Wi-Fi's. Make sure that if somebody's on a public Wi-Fi, that there's more than one layer of approval. Yes, okay, multi-factor to get into the customer folders, great. But because you're on a public Wi-Fi, we also need to validate cellular and make sure that this is actually you. So consider things like that. Mobile's big. Mobile's going to be big. With 5G, we now do things faster, quicker, easier in more places. Here in the Colorado Canyons, they got 5G up there. You can literally watch a video while you're driving up the mountains. Not that you'd want to, but you get my point. You've got to make sure that if somebody has access to your information publicly and they get in on a public Wi-Fi, once you approve that public Wi-Fi is something that is okay, then that means when the bad guy comes in on the public Wi-Fi, you've already multi-factored that it's okay. No, use multi-factor authentications and something like that. VPNs is another important factor. They're not flawless, but they're one more layer that makes you more challenging. Split tunnels. Now, this is something you need to ask your IT about, but make sure there are no split tunnels in your environment. They'll know what you're talking about. But in essence, it is a way for you to access things in multiplicity. Don't want that. It's one way in, one way out, no others. So now, what questions do we ask the IT department? As you can tell, this is going to be a challenging one for them. So be prepared for some pushback, but also know you got to get this right. So what internal systems are we using that require authentication and approval? Now, I made that ambiguous on purpose. I don't want you to ask them if that system is. I want them to tell you what is. And I want you to think about it for a second and go, well, why aren't we protecting that? Or why don't we have multi-factor on this? Maybe that's not during the conversation, but get the answer of what you're currently doing and find out if it's everything that you need. You'll find sometimes that they will not multi-factor on things that are difficult for you as an executive, or your predecessor didn't want to do it, or they have to change the passwords all the time, so they don't want to do it. Find out what they are managing and then take a step back and find out what you think you need to be managing. One question also for them, and again, it ruffles their feathers a little bit, but who do you have to get approval from? So if you, as my IT admin or as my IT director, are in something that I don't think I want you to have easy access to, who approves you getting access to it? Who else is there? Not in the IT team. Difficult question, but just because they're your IT admin does not mean they need to have access to everything, right? So define our defense in depth for me. Just leave that one right there. You need overlapping fields of fire. We've talked about this in other videos. You need defense in depth. So tell me, if we've got somebody on a public Wi-Fi who multi-factored in and all of a sudden somebody is filming what they're doing or watching what they're doing or accessing what they're doing at a later time, how are we proving that we can stop that? What are our layers of defense in doing this? What are our overlapping fields of protection when we have this? Tell me how you plan on managing the algorithms of quantum as we approach that. What are we doing? How are we managing the risk that creates? What have you heard about this? What do you want to learn about this? This is a great opportunity to also help them learn new technologies. You can't hide from this. It's going to happen. It's like AI. It just threw onto the business world, and here we are, and now we're dealing with the chaos of it. Quantum will move things so much faster than you can imagine, which means things will happen before we can even measure it. You really need to look into this a little bit, but make sure your team knows it's coming and have them or somebody on their team be the person that is in charge of managing quantum technologies as we get closer to them. What training do you need? This is another opportunity for them to propel themselves for you. What training does your team need? What do we need to be giving you that we're not giving you right now? Or what are areas of concern that you have in networking that we need to manage? This used to be, think about this, just 5 years ago, this still used to be plugging in a Cat5 or a Cat6 cable into a device, running that to a desktop, and that's the only place they could point it. It doesn't work like that anymore. Just post-COVID, can you imagine what they did 5, 6 years ago versus what they do now? And then how many access points they have? I don't suspect that they're ignorant to the challenges that they're facing. I'm just wanting you to make sure that they have all the training they need to be as good for you as they can be. So ask them, what do you need help with? What areas do you want? Are there other companies that we're frenemies with, if you will, that, are doing things you want to learn about? And can I send you to lunch with those people to learn a little bit about what they're doing? Learn about the vendors that you've got involved, whether you've got MSPs or MSSPs, or maybe you're working directly with Cisco. What trainings do they have, again, on networking, on understanding protections? There is a lot here. And like I said, this is one of the monsters, and there's a lot that we can check and just be done with. This is not it. This one is going to be complex. This one's going to be challenging. Remember to document. Remember to identify the weaknesses. Where do you have to fix things? Make sure your team is trained. Make sure your company is trained. Make sure you have policies in place that tell people this is how you operate in a public environment. I'm sorry I'm having multiple layers of MFA for you, but we're going to do this to make sure that we're not getting hacked. Make sure that your CUI, your contract related data, is the most protected and has the most layers of difficulty to get to. And then make sure that your team understands the network that they have and what they need to do to manage that network. Get them the training. And if you don't understand this, or it's very complex, or you just want some secondary advice, don't hesitate. Give us a call. We'll give you some free time to just talk you through this and see how we can help.